Federal prosecutors have outlined possibly the biggest hacking scheme ever, one that dates back to 2005 and involves hundreds of millions of dollars. Here to discuss the case is Wall Street Journal cybersecurity reporter Danny Yadron, who joins us from San Francisco. All right,
thanks for having me.
There's a lot to the story, so let's work our way through it. First, who were the hackers and have they been caught?
So the hackers, there's 5 of them, and they're from the old Soviet bloc, either from Russia or the Ukraine. 2 of them have been arrested. One is in the U.S., the other is awaiting extradition. The other 3 are at large, and the thing to keep in mind here is that if they're in Russia, it is very unlikely that the U.S. will be getting them back. You can look at the current situation with Edward Snowden,
right,
just as one example.
Yeah. Now, is there any sense as to whether they could still be hacking those that are possibly in Russia?
Oh, I mean, that is definitely possible. And it's, if you parse through the indictment and talking to some sources formerly in law enforcement, it's believed that these companies were alerted and, shut these guys down, but that doesn't mean they're for sure out or they haven't just moved on to other targets.
Right. Now, these hackers have infiltrated some very recognizable companies, from Nasdaq to Penney's to even us at Dow Jones. How did they do it?
Well, one of the things to keep in mind with all hacking is that, if you're a business and you have various parts of your business on the internet, they are all connected, even if they're separate in your mind. So, in the case of Heartland, one of the biggest payment processing companies in the country, the hackers originally got in through a public-facing, information-only website that had nothing to do with payment systems. But in order, in getting through that, they were able to leapfrog across the network into, very sensitive material and collect a whole bunch of credit card numbers, which they could then profit off themselves or sell in bulk, which is very common, especially with Eastern European organized crime.
So how much did they sell this information for?
It varied. They actually had a funny thing on there where an American credit card number was worth $10, a Canadian one $15, and a European credit card number as much as $50.
And how did the officials track down these hackers?
They don't entirely, for law enforcement purposes, they don't reveal all of how they got onto these guys, but usually breaches are discovered in 2 ways through federal law enforcement. One, you can have the FBI doing a domestic investigation, and they'll notice for example Nasdaq data on an outside the Nasdaq network. This doesn't belong here, and that means it's a breach. And then through computer forensics, you can work your way back. The other way is that the NSA and CIA through their foreign intelligence services can also notice U.S. data on a foreign network, and that doesn't belong there, and then they will tip off U.S. law enforcement, and an investigation can proceed from there.
Unfortunately, this is probably a never-ending game between the hackers and the people who are trying to protect us from hacking, right?
Very much so, and that's a constant tension in prosecution of cybersecurity cases. Because law enforcement, they're always trying to develop the threat, and as soon as you sort of let them know you found them, hackers just change tactics. And there's a lot of ways you can get into a computer system.
Well, we know that you'll be on the case and be tracking the latest developments for us. Danny, thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
You can read more about this at WSJ.com. For Digits, I'm George Stahl.